Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading of the Complete Echo series by C.R. Lamb, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me. Chapter 1, Manhattan, New York City, 3 years earlier. Dean Rowland checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes, then readjusted his tuxedo sleeves to perfection again. He'd been standing by the altar with the minister and his groomsmen for over 20 minutes. His bride was supposed to make her entrance 15 minutes ago. Turning to his best man, an older brother, he asked through gritted teeth, Jean, could you find out what's keeping Leighton? I'm sure she'll be out soon. Jean scanned the church floor for the wedding planner, who seemed to have disappeared. People are getting restless. Family members and guests from New York City's upper crust filled the pews of the large church. Whispers among them started to echo in the cadaverous space. Dean would have preferred a small, intimate wedding over the extravagant event Leighton's mother had planned for more than 300 guests. When he'd first entered the church, thousands of roses, lilies, and other flowers he couldn't name seemed to have jumped at him. He thought they were competing against the church's beautiful stained glass windows, and it seemed wrong. Something had been off since he'd woken up this morning. It might have just been a feeling in the air or his gut, but he always paid attention to his instinct. Well, almost always. He'd been ignoring the same hunch for a few months now, but this time it was harder to ignore. Dean shook off the sense of foreboding and returned to the present issue. I know Leighton wants to make a splashing entrance, but tell her to make this one in 5 minutes. Fine, but smile for crying out loud, or people will think you're not a happy groom. Dean flashed Jean a pointed look. I won't be happy until my bride is standing beside me. I'm going. Jean started to move, but turned back to Dean. Hey, seriously, you are happy, right? Having a ball here, Jean, Dean replied sarcastically. Jean's concern was apparent on his face, but he didn't say anything else before he discreetly made his way out. Dean knew his brother was only looking out for him, so he plastered on a smile to cover his irritation. He turned to his parents, sitting in the first row, and saw questions on their faces. He gave them a reassuring nod, though he wasn't sure whom he was really reassuring, his parents or himself. Chris Sullins, his good friend and groomsman, took Jean's abandoned spot and whispered, Everything all right? We'll find out soon enough. Dean kept a smile on his face while he faced the murmuring guests. Dean's smile vanished when Jean returned moments later. As he handed a note to Dean, Jean's face confirmed what Dean already suspected. The only indication that the message's content affected Dean was the slight tightening of his jaw as he read it. Murmurs in the crowd grew as they realized something was afoot. Dean pocketed the note and asked Jean, Do you mind making the announcement? Jean nodded. Are you okay? Dean wasn't sure of the answer to that question. He simply thanked his brother before walking to his parents. He took his mother's arm and led his confused parents out of their seats. But instead of explaining, he turned to his assistant, Melanie, sitting behind his parents. Get Frank Heller and meet me in the hallway, he instructed in a steady voice. What's going on, son? His father questioned Dean as he led them through the side door to the hallway. Once they were alone, he answered, Leighton had a change of heart. If it weren't for his parents, he wouldn't bother explaining it to anyone. Apparently, she's felt differently about marrying me for a while, but didn't have the courage to say it to my face. The door that led to the main church's floor suddenly banged open. Leighton's father, Samuel Heston, stormed into the hallway. Behind him, the church was in an uproar. What is the meaning of this, Dean? Samuel Heston demanded. His face was red with rage. Dean eyed the man, who almost became his father-in-law. You should ask your daughter. What are you talking about? She's on her way. I was just waiting for her up front. You would have waited for a long time. She's not coming, Dean interrupted, his voice flat. Don't you know where your daughter is on her wedding day? Dean's father jumped in, clearly upset with the news. Dad, I'll handle this. Why don't you and Mom find somewhere to sit? Dean glanced at his sister Kat, who had followed in Heston's wake. Understanding the silent request, she ushered their parents away without a word. When his family was out of earshot, Dean turned to Heston. Leighton could have ended this months ago instead of dragging us all through this fiasco. What are you playing at, Samuel? I swear to God, she said she'd go through with the wedding. Heston abruptly stopped as he realized he'd revealed too much. Dean's hands fisted so tight he could feel his short nails piercing his palms, but he kept his anger in check. He didn't use brute strength to punish people who wronged him. Dean's lead lawyer, Frank Heller, walked in with Melanie as if on cue. Without taking his eyes off Samuel, Dean addressed Frank. Since my fiancé jilted me this afternoon, all agreements on the wedding expenses are void. Correct, Frank? I won't bother with the amount I've already paid, but make sure Heston gets the rest of the bills. I'll be damned if I have to spend another cent on this farce. The blood drained from Samuel's face. Dean knew Samuel was on the brink of bankruptcy due to bad investments and uncontrolled spending on his wife and daughter's parts. He knew Samuel was counting on him as a dutiful son-in-law to bail him out. Oh, and cancel the credit I was going to extend Heston since we won't be family after all, Dean added as he turned away. Wait for a second here, Dean. Samuel reached out a hand to stall Dean. Let me talk to Leighton. Don't bother. Without looking back, Dean walked out of the church. Damn. Ray Allen heard one of her roommates, Brandon, muttering from their tiny apartment's living/dining room. What's that? Ray peeked her head out of the small kitchen. It might house 3 closet-sized bedrooms, but the apartment was still tiny enough that the roommates could hear every little sound the other made. Sometimes it made things a little awkward. Thank goodness for earphones. Brandon looked up from his phone. You know Dean Rowland? He owns Aquarius Media, one of the most innovative companies in the country. Of course I know of him. What about him? Ray walked out with a bowl of cereal and joined Brandon on the couch. He was stood up at the altar yesterday. Brandon showed the article he was reading on his phone. Ray took the phone and read the gossip. Man, that's rough. Brandon reclined on the couch with his arms folded behind his head. I mean, if a rich, successful, good-looking guy like Dean Rowland could get dumped, what's the chance for a guy like me? Ray studied the picture accompanying the article. Dean Rowland posed with his runaway bride in his arms at some event. They looked beautiful together, but Ray didn't detect much chemistry between them. The way the couple stood rigidly next to each other didn't exactly scream love. Maybe that was why the fiancé had a change of mind. He might be all of that, but it doesn't mean he's perfect, Ray rebutted. What are you worrying about anyway? Didn't you get 3 bras thrown at you at the last gig? Ray grinned, remembering Brandon's dumbstruck expression as one of those mentioned bras hit him on the face. It had been a double D sheer number. She'd think by now that he would have gotten used to that treatment, being the front man of a popular indie rock band. That's all fun, of course, Brandon grinned, but I'm talking about love and that special someone you'd commit yourself to for the rest of your life. Ray watched her friend's musing face and smiled. At 27 years old, Brandon, with his slightly longer than normal wavy light brown hair and that boy next door charm that every mother would love, add in the rocker vibe with his half-sleeve tattoos and a stylish, disheveled persona, he was just too hard for many girls to resist. But the side of Brandon that had always fascinated her was his belief in love. Obviously, being rich, successful, and good-looking isn't the key to a happily ever after, Ray said with a shrug. There is no guarantee, period. It's all a fairy tale. So, if you don't expect it, you won't get disappointed. Brandon turned to her with a deep frown. That's depressing, Ray. It's called managing expectations. Ray put a spoonful of her now soggy cornflakes into her mouth. Brandon sat up and scrutinized Ray with a teasing smile. You're telling me you don't have any desire to find that special someone you just can't live without, someone who will always have a special space in your heart, so special that your heart doesn't feel whole when that someone isn't there? Is that what you're looking for? Waiting for? Ray's eyes rose in skepticism. From my experience, giving a big piece of your heart like that tends to lead to heartbreak. Brandon's smile wavered slightly, and for a fleeting glimpse, Ray sensed that Brandon knew exactly what she was talking about. But in the next second, he recovered. Heartbreak is always a risk for the kind of love worth the wait. Brandon stated with a solemn smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The door to bedroom number 3 swung open, and a tall guy with a bad case of bedhead walked out in a t-shirt and boxer shorts. What are you guys yapping about out here so early? Curtis complained as he yawned. Brandon checked the time on his phone. It's almost 10. It's fucking Saturday. What's so important that you had to interrupt my beauty sleep? Curtis dropped onto the only reading chair in the room, propped his feet on the coffee table, and promptly shut his eyes again. Oh, nothing. We're just talking about some rich guy who got dumped at the altar, which led to Brandon going on a tangent about forever love and all. Ray finished her cereal and got up to the kitchen. Curtis groaned. God, I know, right? Ray shrugged as she put her bowl into the dishwasher. I say, why waste time searching, waiting for love when you just get left behind and broken anyway? Ray closed the dishwasher door, turned back, and found Brandon studying her with a peculiar look. Not every love story gets a happy ending, but it doesn't mean you should give up trying to find it, Brandon said. Well, some people just aren't meant for it. Everyone deserves love, Ray, but not everyone gets it or needs it. Ray gathered her bag with her laptop and notes. Anyway, I gotta go do some work. Brandon's eyebrow rose at her abrupt segue. I'll see you at your show tonight. Ray opened the door. People need love, Ray. Brandon tried to get the last word in. Oh, for crying out loud, would you stop? Curtis rolled his eyes at Brandon. Agree to disagree, but you do you, boo. Ray grinned at Brandon before closing the door behind her.